Buenos días, estamos con Erin Godtland. Ella es la representante de la Oficina de Rendición de Cuentas Gubernamental de los Estados Unidos de América. Hello, Mrs. Godtland, good morning.
Good morning.
Ok. Sí, primera pregunta. En su opinión, ¿qué fortalezas y debilidades posee la auditoría de desempeño en México respecto del ejercicio de evaluación que desarrolla la GAO? In your opinion, what strengths and weaknesses does performance auditing in Mexico hold regarding the evaluation exercise developed by GAO?
Thank you so much. I should say that I have limited exposure, quite frankly, to the auditing process that takes place here in Mexico. But what I've seen from this conference especially, a number of things stand out to me. One is clearly the level of dedication and commitment that the Mexicans have to conducting high-quality audits. I've been very, very impressed by the presentations and the level of discussion that's taking place here, the questions that are asked. It's very clear that the Mexicans have very high standards. I've had some conversations about the criteria that are used, the yellow book and the green book. It seems that everyone is using sort of the gold standards for conducting audits in Mexico at all levels. And then finally, I've been very pleased to see the level of discourse and communication between the different auditing offices, the federal office, the state offices, and the municipal offices. And the fact that they're all coming together here to exchange lessons learned and knowledge is something to me that's very important and is going to be instrumental for Mexico in continuing to combat fraud and corruption.
Okay. ¿Cómo funciona el servicio civil de carrera de la Oficina de Contabilidad Gubernamental de los Estados Unidos? Well, the next question is, how does the civil service career at GAO work?
So typically at GAO, we have people who enter at the very sort of lowest level, and that's the way that they come into the agency. That's the way most people come into our agency. And what we have is a program, it's called the Professional Development Program, and it lasts for 2 years. And it's a very intensive program. We invest a tremendous amount of resources in that process. And what we do is we train people who are coming out primarily of universities who've obtained master's degrees, and we train them in auditing, in performance auditing. And they go through a number of classes, many classes, weeks of classes, but they also are doing on-the-job training. And they rotate through 3 of our different teams. So we have a number of mission teams that basically focus on different parts of the government. And as a result, they get exposed to different facets of government programs at the federal level. After they complete the professional development program, they're promoted out into basically the regular pool of auditors, and they start conducting audits, full audits for the entirety of the audit. And then at the very end of that process, when they've advanced enough and gained enough knowledge about how to conduct audits, they advance to a project manager where they're basically leading the audit. And then after that, they advance to an assistant director level where they're overseeing multiple audits. And then finally, they advance to something that we call the senior executive service. And I don't know if there's an equivalent here in Mexico, but that's the people who really represent to the public our agency, the face of our agency. So they're the ones, for example, who testify to Congress directly. So that's sort of the career path that a typical auditor would take.
Okay, thank you. ¿Qué medidas ha propuesto la GAO para coadyuvar en la disminución del déficit presupuestario de los Estados Unidos? What proposal has GAO made to help reduce the budget deficit in the United States?
Okay. So the GAO has a number of ways to go about trying to help reduce the deficit. One thing that we do is we make recommendations to federal agencies. And those recommendations sometimes are related to improving the quality and the performance of a particular program, but often they're related to improving efficiency. And when we do this, we make a recommendation that they make some change to the way they're conducting their work that saves dollars. And when we do that, we follow up on it. We follow up over the course of several years to find out if in fact the agency has implemented this recommendation, and if it has, we're saving money basically for the federal government. And we add that up, we total it up every year to kind of hold ourselves accountable for how much money we're saving through our efforts in our agency. And just to give you an example, in 2015, for every dollar invested in a GAO representative, the government saved $134. So we did a lot of work that year. It was a good year. Now what we do is we compile all of these recommendations that have something to do with cost savings. And some of them have to do with duplication of programs. So programs are doing something very similar, and they could be consolidated. And so we have a report that's issued annually called our Duplication, Overlap, and Fragmentation Report. And that report outlines all of these steps that agencies could take to improve efficiencies. So those are the main ways that we are trying to reduce the budget deficit.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Desde la perspectiva de un país como el suyo, ¿cómo se perciben los indicadores de la economía de los países latinoamericanos? From your country perspective, how are economic indicators from Latin American countries seen?
Okay, so I'll just say, I'll preface this by saying I am not an expert, I would say, in Latin American economics, although I spend a bit of time in South America in different countries. And of course, it's not within GAO's jurisdiction. We don't, for example, we don't make recommendations to foreign governments. We really are concentrated and focused on our federal government. That said, from my personal perspective, over the course of having worked with Latin America for almost 20 years, I can say I feel like things have been steadily improving from an economic perspective. I think there's been a great emphasis on education and the development of human capital, especially in Mexico with the Progresa program, and it has new names now. But there are more people working at higher levels, and I think the inflation has been under control for many years. In most countries, unfortunately, in some countries things have not gone so well, such as Venezuela. But overall, I think that Latin America is on an upward trajectory from an international economic standpoint, and its position in the international market has been improving.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Godtland, and welcome to Mexico.